All right, so welcome everyone, and thank you for coming along to this second part of the OnTask workshop, which is where we really get hands-on with the tool and to learn how to use it in a step-by-step way. So what I'll be doing in this session is to to take you through the whole process of, from first setting up OnTask right through to creating those messages and sending them off. And basically, we're doing what we call a workflow. A workflow is basically the whole messaging and feedback strategy that you have for your subject. All right, so I'll be taking you through 3 scenarios in this session. And so there will be a lot of click around and it gets pretty intense. So towards the end, I'm just going to get us to step back and think about our subject, because it's not just about using the tool, but also it's about thinking about how we design the feedback into our subject so that it really makes sense for the students, and it's something that they are able to act on. And then finally, I'll talk about the ongoing support that is available as you work with OnTask through the semester. Once again, at any time, please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. All right, so today we're working with OnTask, and by now you would have hopefully been able to give OnTask a try with your account details that I've sent through. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, in my email, I had requested for you to just do a little bit of preparation, which is to download this data set, just checking that everyone has managed to do that now, and save it in your desktop somewhere that you can retrieve easily, because this is the data set that we'll be using throughout this session. And the scenario is just really very a common scenario. So you have a large subject, although of course not as large as yours, Rena, 1,200 students are close to 500 students. And it's enrolled by diverse students coming from different programs, coming from either a domestic or international status, different study load, and therefore different subject motivations. So some of them are taking it as their major, and some of them are not taking it as their major, which has implications on their motivation, for learning in the subject, and how willing they are to, to put in the effort or to really go far with it. So imagine that this is a fully online learning environment with Zoom lectures and weekly quizzes and some weekly discussion forums. Excuse me for a while. Okay, so I just get you to have that ready. And now I'm going to get you to log on to OnTask with this website. Let me just pop it into the chat so that you can easily get it. There you go. So just hop on to OnTask, right? And when you log in, you will see a dashboard space. So right now mine looks really crowded because these are basically all the different workflows that I have created or have been part of over the past few years. So yours will be empty for the moment, but as you keep using it, you will have a record of all your workflows. And what is nice about that is that you are actually able to replicate in future iterations of the subject. So, it's not like you're doing this once and then you got to do it all over again. There is a record of all the emails and all the conditions and all the actions that you have created that you can replicate again in future. Okay, so that's the interface of OnTask. And now the first thing that we need to do is to set up OnTask for your subject. All right, so what I'm going to do is you can actually, okay, I can't remember whether I've shown you this. You can actually download this set of slides. Okay, just get there. Let me share with you the link to this slide so that you can actually follow it along with it. And, basically it's a manual for you in future. Give me a sec. So I'm popping it in the chat now. You can just download this and put it on your computer as well and follow along. So there'll be some times when I need to go slower, or sometimes when I need to go, if I need to go a bit slower for some people, the rest of might want to push on ahead and explore the various functions using this manual. So I'll be following this manual very closely. So if you're ever lost as well, just just come back to the page that we're at, and it should be okay. But again, please do stop me and raise a hand and shout out if there's anything that I can help with in particular. Okay. So let's get back here, and we're going to create a new workflow. So in order to do that, it's very simple. So OnTask has quite a clear signpost and instructions, even with these action buttons. So everything starts with a new workflow. A new workflow is basically a subject where you hold all the information about your students and all the emails that are going to be sent out by you. So let's create this new workflow. And a tip here is to call it the name of the subject, and also indicate the session that it's in. So for example, spring 2022, right? Because why I do this is because you're likely to use it again in future. So it's helpful to have both the subject name as well as the session that you're doing, so that you're clear which workflow this belongs to. And you don't have to fill in the description text, but sometimes if you find it helpful for yourself as well, you can just indicate it very simply. Yeah. I'm just going to follow what's in the manual. So it's Intro to Psychology, Spring 2022, and then just click Create Workflow. All right. And this will open up a new dialog. All right. And basically it's a prompt to start populating the table with key student information. Right. So you can see here there's a few options for uploading data. Typically, we will be working with the CSV or the Excel. I like the CSV format better because the Excel upload requires you, it recognizes that in your Excel workbook, there'll be different worksheets. So you actually have to specify the name of the worksheet that you are uploading data from. So it's like one more step. So I like working with CSV files because it's a more direct upload. And typically, like if you download files from your third-party apps, it tends to be in CSV anyway. So let's go ahead and do this. Click on the CSV file upload. So what we're doing right now is we're filling in the table with key student information so that OnTask knows the basic information, especially the emails of the student, because that's going to be used for sending out the email. Okay, so in that folder, you will see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the message text. All right, so what we're going to work through is one by one. We're going to upload these data files. We'll start first with the student list. So this student list comprises the basic information: student name, their program information, their emails. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that. And then you will see that this is the file that is recognized by OnTask that it's going to open. And then just click on next.
Sorry, Lisa, I have a quick question.
Yes.
While I'm thinking about student list, so you know how during semester, you have students that drop out and they, so do you have to then do some sort of update in the semesters, or how does it work? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really want to be sending feedback to a student that's no longer enrolled in my class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I should mention at this point that OnTask is currently running in pilot mode, so it's not integrated with the systems. Hence, we do have to do a bit of uploading and downloading of data. So how the academics and course subject coordinators have been dealing with this is that they would be checking their attendance status, because yeah, you don't get notifications from students saying, hi, sorry, I'm withdrawing, bye. So it's kind of like, oh, this student's suddenly not here anymore, right? So what we tend to do is to just, every time we have a new action to go with, we would check the number of the rows in the student table against what we have on the record, for example, in Canvas. And what we would do would be a kind of quick pivot table to just see who are the ones that are not around anymore. And then instead of deleting data, which I'm not fond of because we tend to lose information that way, is we would just flag in a new column of the table with a 0, for example, that these students are not around anymore. And then you can actually filter, I'll show you how, you can filter your actions so that these students are not included in the batch email sendouts. I hope that makes sense for now. Yeah, but again, I'll be happy to talk to you at the end to see if you have any questions about that still. Yeah. Kiedra, can I, if you have a question as well?
Yeah, and also, so how did you generate the student list? Because it doesn't quite look like the kind of typical CAS download that, or CAT, whatever the system download you get.
Okay, so this data set was actually downloaded from, it's a fake data set. So it's downloaded from a different learning management system. So we're using Canvas, and I'll show you later about the Canvas download information, how to go about that. So it does look slightly different.
Right. The thing is also Canvas enrollments also don't always actually match the actual enrollments. So quite often it's not refreshed, or quite often I have students who have withdrawn a long time ago and they're still appearing on Canvas. So I usually typically go with a CAS list, but it comes in a different format.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand that is tricky. So that's why we want to make sure that we have as much information as possible so that OnTask can find the matching information. Most important really is that email address. So far, when I've worked with academics, they have been using the Canvas data because also they are using, they're getting their data from Canvas. So whatever data is in Canvas has been, that's what they have been using, especially for marks, because those are the marks that they are using for feedback. Yeah, but I understand there are, this might be slightly different from the CAS and MSA Plus as well. So you might just want to check for your particular situation, which is the best data to actually use.
But sorry, so as long as that data is available, it can be in a different format, or does it have to have the columns and the format exactly the way you have set up currently?
Okay, the quick answer to that is no, it does not have to be in the same format, but most important, it needs to have the student email address and the student name. Yeah. The rest of it, actually, that information is, the information in that data set is example data. So you might have other information, and I'll talk briefly about the other kinds of information that can go into the table as well. All right. Okay, let's click on next to see how OnTask is going to process that data. So this is what OnTask has read in the data. These are the column headings. So you would need to have your column headings quite clearly stated. And this is what OnTask has identified. And you can see this column called key information. So this is an important column because key information refers to the data that OnTask will be used to match new data that comes in. Every time you upload new data, it's looking for either the SID or email. And how OnTask recognizes this as key is because the information in every row is unique. So if this is not key, if you don't see these highlighted as key, it means somewhere there is a duplicate, or somewhere some information is missing. So at this point in time, when you notice that these are not, these are not key, you might want to check your data set and the data that you're uploading, and make sure that all the information is there and that there are no duplicates, basically. So it's just, I guess this helps us to double check and keep an eye on the I guess the veracity of the data that we're uploading. So all these data will be uploaded into the table in OnTask, and just click on finish. Yeah. So this is how the table now looks like with all the student information. Okay. And so this is your basic information table of the students with the key information that is needed to contact them, basically. And with some demographic characteristics, if you have any. I understand that this is not always available, but if you do have it, it might be something that you are interested in to add as well for personalization. Another handy feature, oh, sorry, so new columns are, whenever you add new columns, they're added to the right. And right now it's only showing 10 entries, which is why it looks so short. But you can actually change your view. If you want it to be a bit bigger, you can increase the number of rows that are visible. Yeah. Okay. A handy feature in OnTask is the dashboard feature, which shows you at a glance some of the, a summary statistics. So, okay, OnTask is not very clever about this. So what it does is it just takes the information from every column and turns it into a graph, which is not something that you need, especially for names and, student IDs. But what's helpful is if you know things like, so that's what I mean, like it just comes up with, it just throws in a graph for every single data, but it's not necessary. What might be interesting is just things like gender, even split between males and females. The program, this might be interesting because then you see a spread of who's from different faculties, the enrollment type. So in terms of if you wanted to think about, should I be, sending personalized emails to my international students? Do I have a lot of them? And it looks like you actually do have a lot, so it might make sense to target your communications to make sure you are supporting them specifically. And in terms of full-time versus part-time, whether to, personalize support to part-time students, it doesn't look like there's very many part-time students, so you can probably just focus on the full-time. So this dashboard gives you an overview really of the numbers that are spread across your students' cohort. So for large courses like RENAs, 1,200 students, you might want to know where your students are coming from. If you have that information again, yeah. And just helpful to think about what are the needs then, like what, whether you want to personalize according to any of these information or characteristics. Okay, so that's the dashboard. And if you're following with the slides, we are now on slide 18. Okay, so here's where we get to that question about the enrollment data from Canvas. So here's a little note on retrieving the class roster from your subject Canvas. First up, it's really important to enable new analytics when you first publish your Canvas subject. Otherwise, Canvas does not capture that data, the engagement data. So here is a quick primer on how you do it, the new analytics on the sidebar. And then when you do that, you will also see your class roster. And this is where you pick up the class roster information. And Gedra, you're right. The data that is pulled out from the Canvas site is different. So this is how it actually looks like. So these are the conventions that I used. Student name and SIS ID. So you can see that in Canvas, it doesn't actually even pull out the student first name and student last name. So what you can do is just to pull these out in separate columns in Excel. Right? So when you're using Canvas, the Canvas class roster, what you want to do is to assign these as key columns. Right?
And sorry, how do you assign them? Will they automatically be picked up?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So they will automatically be picked up, by OnTask, but just check if they aren't. Make sure that that tick is there for key column for these two columns. All right, so now that table doesn't stop there because students go through the subject and they'll be doing different things, and so you'll be adding and there'll be new data generated around their engagement and performance. So you'll be likely adding more data to this table as the subject goes on. It's very dynamic. So I'm going to talk now about the next important step of uploading and merging additional information to that student table. Okay, so if you're following along right now, we are on slide 22. Okay, so what we'll do is click on the manage table, upload or merge data under this tab. Okay. And if you just click on that, you will see the same interface. Yeah, so it just asks you to which option you want to choose in terms of the upload. Let's go with the CSV upload again. And then we choose the file. We're going to work through the second file. So let's put in the attendance data. All right, so this particular data file has attendance over 4 weeks. And just open that. And then on next. And so this is what this is what OnTask can read from your new table. You can see the student SIS ID is there. There's an option to rename the column if you want to, especially if the name is different from the what's in the key column in OnTask. So if you wish to, you can actually rename it here, or you can rename it in the Excel file that you're preparing. So you can see that OnTask has recognized this as key, which is a good sign, which means that because it means that there is, in terms of the student ID, there is unique value in every row. All right, so you don't have no duplicates. And then just click on next. And OnTask just shows you several options. Make sure that the key column in the existing table is the same as the key column in the new table, because these will be what it's on matching with. And then when you choose the method of merging, just select all rows, because if you don't select all rows, we tend to miss out some data and lose data, which affects the, especially it might affect the key information. So we like to choose all rows. Okay, and then we'll just click on next. And then OnTask tells you that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to I'm going to match the student SID with from the new data to the existing data, and then I'm going to include this new data. And so this is all going to be added to your table. And then I'm going to click on finish. And there you will see your new columns added to the right. All right. So now it looks like, oh, it's not in order, and that's no problem. If you're not, if you feel like it needs to be in order, you can actually move it around so that you can move columns around basically, so that if it's handier for you or easier for you to see. Yes, Gabriel, I think you have a question.
Sorry if I missed that information as well about the attendance list, how it was generated.
Okay, so the attendance list can come from various sources. Attendance list could come from Teams or could come from Zoom. So in Zoom, you can actually, Zoom actually gives you the name of the attendee, yeah, or the email. I think it's a name. So what you might need to do is to match the data to the name. Can it come from Quickly? You've asked. I have to confess, this Quickly is new to me. I haven't actually worked with it yet, but I believe it should be able to. If you would like, I'll be happy to work with you to see how we can do that. Yep. And I'll talk about the ongoing support that's available at the end of this workshop. Yeah, but thanks for that question. Yeah, I know that's a new attendance system at the moment. I haven't actually heard how academics have used it, but I'm keen to know as well. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we have added this new data and we can see these new columns, right? What I'm going to get you to do now is to, okay, so we've done this. So I'm going to invite you to give it a go yourself. Okay, so upload the next file from the dataset, the training dataset folder into OnTask. Upload this file following the steps that we have just done. Okay, how's everyone doing? Were you able to upload that? Yeah, very good. So it's quite simple. The upload function is just probably something to keep in mind is just preparing the data beforehand to make sure that that key information is there. So I'm just going to quickly do that now so that I have the same table as you. So I'm going to just choose that and put the quiz, weekly quiz score. Next. Just making sure that the SIS ID is recognized as key and that there are these 4 columns. And next. Okay, matching key columns and choose all rows to merge. And you can see that this is the new information to be added and finish. All right, and the new information is added to the right again. Okay, so these are the steps that you typically be going through as you go through your subject, setting up the workflow and then adding new information as it comes in. Okay, so what we're going to do next is to work on the actions. How do we actually create personalized feedback messages to our students? So I'm going to go through 3 scenarios for personalizing the feedback and support messages. The first is actually creating the text conditions to send emails to all students in a personalized way. The next is to create filters to send messages to subgroups of students. And the third is to send information to students based on their send messages and feedback to students based on surveys, right? So in the first scenario, what we're going to do is, I'll just first take you through the step of how to actually get to that message editor that is seen in part 1. So to create your personalized message, you will go to actions. So actions refers to those messages, creating the messages. So you can either go here or click on here to access that, that part of the function. And then it tells you just to click on the new action to create a new personalized email or message, right? So plus action means to add that action, okay? And and then you'll be led to this dialog, which tells you, gets you to specify what exactly is your email going to be about, okay? So here's the first scenario. We're going to create a personalized message with different text conditions for all students, all right? So we're on slide 34, if you're following. So we're going to create a condition based on study load, which is full-time or part-time. Okay, so let's call this, okay, now on slide 35, if you're following, let's call this week 1 welcome. Okay. And a helpful description, so I'll call it like welcome and tailoring of messages based on study load. Okay, so this is just to help me to be able to see quickly what was this email about, what was this message that I've created, so that I can see from my dashboard later what I've done. You keep the action type as personalized text, because this is the main function that we're using in OnTask, and then create the action. And then that will lead you to the message editor. All right, so it looks like a normal email interface. You can actually drag down if it's too small for your view. But the first place, if you're creating a personalized message with conditions, the first thing that you want to do is specify your text conditions. So you would click here first to specify conditions that you want to create your personalized message. In this case, we are personalizing messages based to full-time and part-time students. So we're going to create conditions according to those, okay? So let's create a condition by clicking on the plus condition. And let's call this for part-time students. Let's start first with part-time students. So I call this part-time, and I will call this for part-time students. So this is slide 38 now. And this helps me because it helps me to know what my rule should look like. So I'm looking at part-time students, which means that my study load, okay, is equal to part-time. So, okay, a point to note here is that when when our data in the student table for a particular column is made of text, such as this column, the study load column contains information that is called part-time and full-time. We need to follow the convention in terms of the capitalization and the way that it was input so that OnTask can recognize. Yeah, so in this case, I know that it has been capitalized. So I would put this as, indicate this. So for this condition is for students with study load equal part-time. All right, and then I would create the condition. And the nice thing is that OnTask tells me, okay, you want part-time students. I have 45 learners in the table, and that should be correct. So if you got the condition, if you didn't, for example, if you didn't identify the condition correctly, this will actually turn up as 0. So it's a way for you to check as well whether you've input the correct condition. All right. Okay, so simple enough, yeah. I'm going to let you try to do one now for the full-time condition. So try to create another condition to personalize, to create a condition for full-time students. So I've put the capitalization here. So this is how it should actually look like. Okay, everyone okay? Is this simple enough? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to add now for myself so that I'm on par with you. So I'm going to put for full-time students. And so it will be study load equal full-time. And then create a condition. So now you can see on your 2 conditions, and here's another way to just check that you have the correct conditions as well. We know that we have 500 students, so we divided them into part-time and full-time. So we just want to check that the numbers add up. So I'll go like, okay, so I have 45 here and 455. Yep, that's 500, so that would be correct. Making sure this just helps me to know whether I've put the conditions correctly. These are simple conditions. It gets complicated once you start adding those other binary, those other operators like the and not and or. That gets a little bit more tricky, but for these ones are simpler. But this is basically how you can double check that your conditions are correct. Okay, so now we have created the conditions. We can go ahead now and create that message for students. So we will go to this tab, the personalized text tab. To get back to the message editor. Okay. All right, we're not going to type out a message from scratch here. So what I'm going to get you to do is to go back to the data set that you have downloaded. Where is it now? So you go back to your training data set, right? You will see this folder called message text. All right, so go ahead and open that up. And we're going to open this one. All right, message text week 1 welcome. All right, and just double click to open it. And what we'll do is basically we'll copy and paste that whole text, but I'll just run through it with you first. So the advice I have is to actually write out the whole message, including the bits that you have for your various conditions. So in this particular scenario, we have 2 conditions, part-time and full-time. I've written out the whole message, including the bits for both conditions. And then we're going to put this into OnTask. Okay. So you can see that I've got here some hyperlinks as well. We will lose this when we transfer this over to OnTask, but we have a record of it here, so we can put it back. Okay, so just copy it and put it into the text, the editor. Okay, so we're just making sure that we follow, the conventions of, personalized, timely, supportive feedback. So making sure that it's a warm welcome to students and offering support for them, and making sure that it's clear who this email is coming from. So it's coming from you, for example. Okay, so how do we then make this a personalized message? Okay, what we would do is we want the student's first name here, right? We want to say dear student name. So what we'll do is we put our cursor right at the point where we need the student's name to be. And we'll click on this column, this particular button called insert column value. All right, so we're going to insert the student's given name. So this is their full name. So basically, OnTask will pull up each individual name and replace it in here. Okay. All right, but still we haven't got those conditions inside the message. Is that if we have it like this, this whole message will go out to all students. So how do we actually get those personalized bits? Very simply, we would select the bits that are, in this case, for part-time students. So this is the message specifically for part-time students. And then we would go to this button that says use condition. Click on it, and so this is the part-time condition, so we click on part-time. Yeah. And so what OnTask has done is it has tagged up, the bit where students, where this portion of the email will go only to part-time students. All right, so that's how OnTask identifies the personalized bits. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you and get you to try assigning the condition for full-time students. Okay. Okay, was that okay for everyone? No one has any problems? Yeah. So just highlight that bit and then assign to the full-time condition so that part-time and full-time students will get a separate message, a different message. Okay, so remember we had some hyperlinks. So the nice thing about OnTask is that you can include these hyperlinks to help students basically to know, what is their next action to take them there directly. So you can actually add these hyperlinks in by using the usual link functions. All right, so highlight the text and then add your, whatever is the hyperlink, and then it will be activated in the text. Okay, so a point to note here is that you want to make sure that you have assigned all your conditions first before adding in any other formatting like the hyperlinks, or you can even add format according to italics or underlining and things like that. So I would suggest to do that after you have done all your assignment of the conditions, because if you do that before and then you add the assignment of conditions, OnTask tends to scrub off all the formatting. Yeah, so we'll do that at the end. All right, so that's it. That's how we create a message. And what I'll get you to do is to remember to save, because sometimes you forget. Okay, so just save your message so that it's captured and you don't lose your hard work. Okay, and here's a really nice feature that I like about OnTask, which is that it actually allows you to do some preview, because if you're sending to 1,200 students, you want to make sure that the conditions are correct and that the students are getting the correct message, basically. So this nice button allows you to preview. So unfortunately, and I wish this is on my wish list for OnTask, you can't actually choose a particular student to look at. You kind of have to keep scrolling through until you find a different condition. So for this case, you can see, okay, so this is the student's name and this is the information. So this student is a full-time student and he's getting the full-time message. Yeah, and so on. Let's find a part-time. Okay, part-time is here. So a student who has a part-time, and this message says you're a part-time student. So yeah, just checking that that's correct. And you can see whether the formatting looks okay as well. And then you can make any changes that you want to. Yeah, and then you can see also the, whether the hyperlinks are active. Okay. All right, so that's what we have done. We have just created a personalized message to students, to all students based on text conditions. Okay, so that's our first scenario. Now for our next scenario, what we're going to do is to create a condition based on ongoing performance. So let's close this. Okay, it's saved now. So and anyway, when you press the close button, it saves and closes. So that's a nice thing as well. So the message is here, it's here ready for you to edit and then run at a later point, which I will go through in a while. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to create a new message that is based on students' ongoing quiz performance. Okay, so let's go to this is a new email. So it's a new action. And we're on slide 55, if you want to follow. Let's call this quizzes 3 and 4 feedback. Okay, and the description, we can just call it pass, fail, feedback for quizzes 3 and 4. Yeah, I like to have this description handy because you can see it's on my on the summary page so that I can see, oh, what was this message actually about? Oh, it was about this. I had done this pass fail. I was using conditions based on pass and fail and so on, so that it's clear for me what I actually did. Okay. And then create the action. And then this leads me into the message editor. And the first place that I want to go to, because I'm creating conditions, is to go to the text conditions tab again so that I can define my conditions. All right, so now I'm giving feedback I want to give my students feedback based on the week 3 and 4 quizzes and whether they had passed or failed on each quiz. So basically it means that we're going to have to create 4 conditions because it's quiz 3 pass and quiz 3 fail, quiz 4 pass and quiz 4 fail. So I'm probably starting to get a bit familiar with this now. So let's just click on plus condition and let's do the first one. Okay, right now we're on slide 57. If you want to follow, let's do the quiz week 3 pass. So I call this if quiz week 3 passed. And for me, it will be helpful for me to specify, in this case, it means that the students got 50 or more. If you're wondering why I'm getting those text suggestions here, it's because I have already prepared this in OnTask before. So OnTask actually saved all the information and it helps me to quickly input the text. So it's something useful for you as well, especially if you're doing this using OnTask over a number of times. It actually prompts you, is this the text that you're looking for, so that you don't have to type everything again. Okay, so we're looking for this condition, quiz week 3, 50 or more. All right, so there is an option here. In this case, it is greater or equal to 50. All right, and then we will create the condition. So that's the first condition, identify 26 learners who had passed quiz week 3. And now on the flip side, we're going to create a condition for if quiz week 3 failed. Right, so fail means less than 50. So quiz week 3 less than 50. And this is helpful because when I go to my conditions, I can follow what I have written in the description. Quiz week 3 less than 50. and then create the condition. Okay, so right now we have these two conditions for week 3 quiz, pass or fail. Again, we can see a quick look, we can see that, yep, the numbers add up, it's 500. All right. Okay, over to you. I'm going to get you to create the conditions for quiz week 4, pass, and quiz week 4, failed.
Sorry, Lisa, just
Yeah.
quickly. So I noticed that there's like an edit, a trash, and then there's like, is that a duplicate?
Yes, that's a duplicate.
So could I just duplicate it and change it to like week 4 and then change all the settings? Is that a faster way or not?
That's a fantastic point. Yes, you could actually do that.
Oh, so I could. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So when you duplicate it, what you would do is it comes up here, right? Copy off.
Okay, and then just change those.
And edit that.
Okay. All right. I'll try it. Yep.
A good point though. No one has raised that before, but yes, that's what you could actually do. Okay, over to you. Just let you work on that. Okay, is everyone good? Let me just get up to speed on mine. Is anyone having any difficulties? Please give a yell. But yeah, some good comments in the chat. I'll just update this and then I'll go greater to 50. So quiz week 4, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Yep, shortcuts are always handy, especially in systems such as this. Edit. So if quiz. Yes. Okay, so on your dashboard of conditions, you should see all these now, 4 conditions, and these numbers look like they add up, which is good news. All right. Again, these are really simple conditions. Sometimes academics like to, segment this, especially when it comes to performance scores, feedback. They like to segment it a little bit finer so that they can give more tailored feedback. But for now, this is what we, for starters, this is what we will do. And then as you are more conversant with the tool, you can actually start to think about more conditions. So there was a good point in the chat. Yeah, we noticed that, yeah, this was both quizzes like had very few learners who passed. So it's also something that you can indicate in your feedback to all students, and starting with like, hey, these quizzes, they were a bit hard, but don't be discouraged, something like that. So give students some encouragement, especially we're finding that when students get low marks, this does affect the self-efficacy, their confidence. So we just want to make sure that there's something that they know that they can do in order to improve for the next time. Okay, so we've created our 4 conditions. So what's next would be to move over to the text editor so that we can create our personalized messages. So let's move over to the personalized text. And look into your training dataset folder now. You'll see in the message text, there is a message text for quizzes week 3 and 4 feedback. We'll just open that and then we'll copy and paste that into the editor. So this is a kind of a long message with the various segments here and with hyperlinks. Okay, so let's just copy all that and move that into the text editor. Okay, do you remember what to do next? Okay, we'll probably want to just make sure we got the...
I didn't do the hyperlink last time, so it strips the hyperlinks and then you need to recreate all of them.
Yeah. So we'll do, all the hyperlinks and the formatting. We'll do that like after you have assigned conditions. So which is why academics usually also prepare the messages in a Word document so that it's all there and they just copy and paste things over. Sorry, Rena.
Conditions, and so it's like a name, a condition?
No, the name is a what do you call piped in data.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is what actually I learned, that how we get all those emails from our online shopping, right? So I realized that this is how they actually have done it as well. They have, that's why they want our first name and last name, because then they pipe in the this information into our emails to make them personalized. So something I learned from using OnTask. So you'll insert, put your cursor where the name should be, and insert the column value, give a name. Yeah. Okay. Do you remember how to assign the conditions? Yeah. So I'll just do the first 2. So this is for the week 3 quiz pass. So I'll use the condition quiz week 3 passed. And so it has assigned it. This is for those who did not pass. And so I'll just assign that. It's failed. Pass the week 4 quiz. Week 4 passed and did not pass week 4. And so this is the condition. Okay, so we have now assigned our 4 conditions. Everyone doing okay? Remember, you can just pull this down if it's a bit too small. And then you can add in your hyperlinks. Yeah, for example. Okay. And don't forget to save. Okay, and remember that you can actually do a preview to just check whether everything looks okay in terms of the correct data being packed in, because sometimes we forget and then we put the full name. So it's something that we can correct. Hyperlinks are activated. This student has failed both quizzes, so you can see did not pass, did not pass. Let's go to one where there is a difference. Okay, so week 3 quiz pass, week 4 quiz pass, so pass both quiz and so on. And then one where they passed one and didn't pass the other. Okay, here week 3 pass, week 4 failed, week 3 pass, week 4 failed. Yeah, so just checking that the conditions are reading correctly. Okay, and then once we're happy with it, we can close it, because when you close it, it also saves at the same time. All right, so what we have done now is we have actually created 2 types of personalized messages. Okay, and we haven't actually sent them off yet. All right, so these messages are sitting here ready to go. And what we would do in order to send off a message is we would click on this rocket button to send it off. Okay, so this is on, we're on slide 65. So just click on this. We're going to do this week 1 welcome. If you click on run, it doesn't straight away send out the emails, which is good. It gets you to specify, because we haven't actually specified an email subject yet. And the email subject is really important because, you know, students get so many emails, they need to know which are the ones to pay attention to. So we really recommend to make sure to give your email subject a name that grabs students' attention, to say, hey, this is important, this is about this course. Okay, so you could do something like that. And also another recommendation is if you're giving feedback, you would also probably want to highlight that this is an email about feedback. So in your subject, email subject, have in there the word feedback, so students know that they're getting feedback. Because sometimes like, students don't know they're getting feedback. So just signposting to them that this is feedback will help them to pay attention to it. Okay. All right, very important. These two, I learned the hard way that you don't fill this up, especially if you have 1,200 students, because what will happen is that you will get each individual email in your inbox. So you will basically get 1,200 emails as CC or BCC. So leave that blank. But what you should tick off is these two options. Okay, so these are important because it tells you whether the message sent was successful. So if you didn't get a summary message, it means that the emails didn't get sent. And if you click this column, actually OnTask creates a new column in the table with 1, 0, or like more than 1. And right now, we've been keeping an eye on this particular column for a while, and it seems pretty accurate in terms of indicating whether students have at least received the email. Okay, and whether they have read it in detail is another thing, but at least they have received it, it has been opened. So sometimes the numbers go up to like 10, 20, 30. I'm not sure what's happening there, but basically if it's more than 0, we can be sure that the students have come across it. Yep. If you see in the table that the number remains 0 for a number of emails, it is an indication that you probably want to follow up with the student whether they are firstly checking their student emails, or yeah, is there another email that they're using? Yeah, okay. So very important, don't fill this in, check these 2 boxes, give a clear email subject name, and make sure that the column, well, this should automatically be defaulted as email because OnTask recognizes the information there as an email address. So it should be picked up. And then to run the email, you would actually click on next. And that is the final send off. Yeah. Okay, so that's how you send off the emails. Okay, any questions so far about that?
So just to check with you, so at no point we, will they basically have the subject name? And,
okay.
Or do we need to type it?
You would actually need to include it. So there is, at the moment, there is no email subject that is automatically filled in. So you can fill it in any way you want. Yes, good idea to put the subject code and the subject name so that students can see what, you know, okay, this is important, this is about this subject. Yeah. All right. So what we've done so far is we've created messages that go out to all students, but personalized based on particular conditions. What I'm going to talk about now, take you through now, is slide 66, which is where we're going to create a filter to send to a specific subgroup of students. Because sometimes we don't need an email for all students. So sometimes students, the subject coordinator just wants to reach the students who are not doing well. So they would create a filter just to reach those subgroup of students. All right. In our case now, what we're going to do is we are going to create a message just for international students, because sometimes international students being abroad or being new here, they might need different kinds of support. So let's go back to our actions page. We can leave this now. Okay, either click on cancel or just go to this actions button here. We're on slide 67 if you are following. What we want to do is, again, create a new action. And let's call it, oh, no, don't worry, Gadra, you didn't send your, if you click the, if you click the run button.
I'm getting bounces back because they're only.
Yeah. Oh dear, I hope you're not going to get 500 pounds.
Well, I guess I will.
Yeah, you might. Oh dear, you might get. But don't worry, none of those emails get sent. So just make sure to clear your email box later. Okay, so we'll call this support for international students. Okay. And I'm going to make it clear so that I can, know for myself what this was about. I'm going to call it message for international, and this was a filtered message, meaning that it was only sent to international students. So let's create the action. And it leads us back to here. Okay, so right now, we're not creating conditions, all right, because we are sending only to a select group of students. So what we want to do, if we're only selecting a particular group of students, targeting a particular group of students for message, is to click on the filter button. Okay, so slide 68, if you're following, we will click on the filter and just add a filter. And in this case, what I would say is I want this to go to internationals only. Yeah. And then, so that particular information is under enrollment type. And I'll call it international. So international with a capital I, because that's how it's been indicated in the table. And then create the filter. And then it tells you that, hey, there's 179 learners who have been identified as international. So this email will only go to 179 learners, students. All right. So that's the simple part. Yeah, that's how you create that filter. And then what we'll do is just go back to the personalized text as usual. And now, if you want to, I'm just going to do it here, but because we've done this a couple of times now, we can fill in the message. It's in your training data set message text folder. The second one, support for internationals. If you just double click on that. Okay, and then you can just copy. Copy and paste that in. Okay, and then as usual, add in the column value, which is the given name. And we don't need to change anything except perhaps to add some hyperlinks. Yeah. Okay, and then save, right? So this is what we've done, is to create a filtered message that only goes out to select subgroup of students. Right. Okay, so that's what we've done. We've now created messages based on conditions. We've also created message based on filters. What can we do? What else can we do is to also create a personalized email based on student survey responses to students. So let me just grab. So we're on slide 70. So sometimes, the information that we get from systems, yeah, it's handy, but it doesn't tell us enough about our students. So we're seeing more and more that it's actually helpful because if we're talking about giving students support, especially, we need to know what are their needs, right? So their needs could be in terms of whether they're having any particular difficulty with learning the subject, or it could even be things like how are they feeling at the moment, what's their motivational level. So these things can't be captured through systems, but they are captured through self-report surveys. So what some academics have done is to actually create a survey just to check in on students, or interestingly, they have even used some of their activities in Canvas. For example, in part one of this workshop, I talked about Keith Haggard from FAS, who discovered that he wasn't actually using some of the information that his students were giving him. At the end of each weekly module, he had them fill in a short reflection about their confidence in achieving learning objectives. And he realized, hey, I could actually personalize support based on what students said about how they were feeling in terms of their mastering the content. Okay, so that was done through a survey. Students basically responded to how confident they were in achieving the learning objectives for that module. Low confidence, medium confidence, high confidence, and then he basically created a personalized message based on those responses. So this is something that is really encouraging to do, because it invites students to also be part of that feedback process. You know, you invite them to give you some information that then you can give them personalized feedback on. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we have done a survey in Quiz and a survey in Canvas. And ask students whether they're taking this subject as a major or not. Okay, so what we need to do is to first pretend that we have already downloaded those survey responses from Canvas, and they're ready to be uploaded into OnTask. So let's go back to our workflow and go back to the table. Okay, so we just click on table. We're going to upload the student survey responses so that we can personalize messages based on that. Okay, so same thing, we would be uploading or merging data. And let's do the CSV upload or merge. Choose the file that is the number 4, Canvas survey quiz. Okay, so this is asking students whether they were taking this as subject as their major or not. Click on open. Okay, and here OnTask is reading the table in your file. And these are the headings. Okay, so here I'm going to give you a little tip as well. Sometimes we don't need all the information that is in the table. For example, we don't need this information on how many attempts the students took for the survey, okay, because we're not going to personalize feedback based on that. So we can actually uncheck that to ask OnTask not to load this particular information. Right? We can also uncheck the name because we already have the student's name. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to uncheck key column information, because then OnTask can match the data with the existing table. So whatever you do, don't uncheck key column data. You can uncheck this so that in the end, we just have the student SIS ID, which is for matching purposes, and this response to the survey question. Okay, so then click on next. And make sure that the key columns are the same, and choose all rows to merge. Then on next, and you can see that, okay, so OnTask is going to match this new, these two, the student SIS ID from the new table to the existing table, and it's going to throw in this new column, and it's going to ignore these other columns because we've asked it to. And then just click on finish. So Gaydra has asked in the chat, can we delete columns once they are merged? Yes, you can. Yeah, you can actually delete it because sometimes your student table becomes too bulky. It's like, oh, there's too much information in here. And so if you want to delete columns, although I would be somewhat hesitant to delete information, because once you delete, there's no undo. So I prefer to keep, but if you really want to, if you're confident enough that you don't need those, what you would go to is the More button, right? And then go to column operations. And this is a list of the columns that are currently in your table. If you click on these 3 buttons, you can have several options. You can actually delete the column from here. But again, this has no undo button. So just be very cautious when you do this to make sure that you really don't need this information. Yeah. Otherwise, you could also, I'm sure, because you would have the information elsewhere, you would just be able to re-upload it again. Yeah. It's just that it's a little bit more work. Okay, so that's how we would create the, a survey with information about students' responses to that survey. Create a new column, based on student surveys responses, and you can see that this is the new column added here. And what you can then do is to personalize your feedback based on the responses. Okay. All right, so that's the 3 scenarios for creating personalized messages. What we have done is created messages based on conditions, created messages that only go to a certain subgroup, and then created a personalized a column with information about responses to surveys. Okay, so what I'm going to do now in the last bit is to go to that part where I said that we're going to step back for a moment. But first, can I just check that anyone has any other questions about what we have done so far? We have set up the workflow, we have added new data and then uploaded and merged data, created text and created messages. All right, so any questions at this point in time?
Now, I've got one, Lisa, Angelique, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So can you create, Boolean strings to make, multiple conditions? So for example, let's say I wanted to communicate, tailor a message to all students who passed quiz 2 and quiz 3, but didn't pass quiz 4.
Yes, so you definitely can. I just didn't go through that because it's a more advanced function for people who maybe are more conversant with creating conditions, but I can quickly just show you where to do that. So you're talking about Boolean conditions. You would just go to the text conditions again.
No.
And let's just, you can edit, each condition. So I'm just going to edit this one. You can see that the Boolean operators are here and you can actually add them in. Yep, so you could do like quiz week 3 and quiz week 4 greater than equal to. Yep, so you can combine rules basically. So when you do that, just make sure to double check, because sometimes this is where the conditions need to be expressed accurately so that you don't duplicate. Yeah. But it is possible to use Boolean. Okay, yeah, I hope that's okay. Okay, Gedra has also asked, how do you use the survey column to personalize messages? Okay, so now you have the table with your new information. You might want to create a particular message to your students based on whether they are taking this as a major, because if they're taking it as a major, they probably need to take note of some important prerequisites perhaps. And they're not taking it as a major, then maybe they don't need so much support if they are failing. So what you would do is you could create a new action based on survey responses. It's like how we've done before. I'm just making this up as I go now. Okay, and then create the action. Okay, and then you would just type in and your condition would be according to whether they answered yes. Okay, I'll put here major equals yes. And so to specify the condition, I will put this particular information equals yes. And then also on the flip side, major equals no. Okay, so this would be again equal no. Okay. And so then you would see this is how the numbers look like. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So basically you would add a new action and then create the conditions and then write the personalized sections. Okay. All right. Are there any last questions? Okay. If not, then let's come back to, because we've done a lot of clicking around in OnTask, and that was just to give you a familiarity with the interface and how to work with it. So just another question. So for messages based on marked assessment results that are on the gradebook, would you download the data and use OnTask or use inbuilt Canvas filtering for writing messages on Canvas? I would say that you could do both. You could do either. You can use that. But what you want to do if you have to have that more personalized feel, I guess, is to use OnTask to write it, because as I understand, Canvas doesn't allow you to actually personalize a message to the student's name. Yeah, so that's the nice thing about this particular tool. Students actually get addressed personally, and you can define like more than one condition. Yeah, so this I guess OnTask kind of deals with the limitations of Canvas messaging by adding that extra personalized touch. Yeah. Okay. All right, so after all that clicking around, now hopefully you are conversant with the interface. I just wanted to get your thoughts to think about your subject, wherever you're coming from. In particular, so this is an important conversation that is good to have with your team, and perhaps and also would be really happy to talk with you further about this in a separate meeting. So these are the things that you would probably need to consider. What are the pain points in your subject for students? Where are the points where you notice that they start to struggle, you start to lose them, or things like that. And so what are the relevant data to support students through these pain points? Will information about their progress help? And we're seeing from the feedback from students that, a lot of the time they don't know how they're doing. So when they get progress feedback from the subject coordinator using OnTask, they've actually expressed that, oh, actually I wasn't doing that badly. It gave me an opportunity to have confidence that I can still carry on. And for those who are doing like not so well, they felt encouraged by the subject coordinator reaching out to them and saying, looks like you could do a little bit better. You're not performing as expected. Here are some things that you can do, and if you want to, I'm happy to please reach out to me as well. We can have a talk. So even like things like helping them to know how they're progressing in the subject as you go along is really helpful for their confidence, and then addressing it before it comes to the end of the subject and it's like, oh, I failed. No, why did I fail? So it's helpful for them to know how they're doing along the way. Another thing that you probably want to think of in terms of designing feedback and support in your subject in a very targeted way is to think about whether there are any subpopulations within your cohort that actually require specific cohorts. So one thing that I've seen in some of the subjects is students who are weaker in the English language. So whether they have done the Opella or not, the subject coordinator has actually reached out to these particular students to being aware of their language needs, to offer them advice, where else to go, and make sure that they are continuing to improve in their language. And the other thing that we want to look at also is, well, how does your learning design look like? When we talk about your learning design, we mean like, how is your course designed, especially in terms of activity cycles? So especially in terms of the regular things that students do, for example, preparatory work before class, coming to class, post-class work. Is there something like that in your subject? So this is an opportunity to give students feedback based on their engagement with each of these cycles, because if this is important for them to actually, master the content, then they need to know that this is something, it's a good study habit, basically. So how can you use OnTask to kind of like encourage students to engage with these various activities in the learning cycle so that they can really get a good, topic mastery of what they're learning. All right. So one thing I always share with colleagues is that the nice thing about OnTask is that it's not like a black box where, dashboards, for example, they use black box analytics because we don't know what goes in there to create those rules for the kind of feedback that students get in the dashboards. So OnTask, think of OnTask as a open white box where you can throw in whatever data you feel is important for students to have feedback on. So can't remember whether I have it here. No, I don't. So it could be things like their attendance report, just helping them to know that, hey, attendance to class is important because it helps you to connect with fellow students and connect with me as your teacher. And performance. And importantly, also just input from students, their own inputs, for example, through surveys or their response to Canvas activities and other things. Yeah. So these are things to think about in terms of how you might want to implement OnTask in your subject. It requires some planning, but we've seen that when you do it once, you basically would be able to do that, repeat that with probably some modification in the next rounds of your subject, or even in other subjects. So remember in part one, if you have attended, these are the examples, some examples of feedback designs. So how you could design the emails in your subject according to what you think would be helpful for students. Yeah, so this is one example, just two mail out points. But just a point here, we have also seen that people have asked, how many emails is best? All right. The answer is more than 2, and the rest depends on your learning context. But we have seen that 2 is actually too small a number to make an impact on students. They don't get the sense that they're getting that regular feedback enough to value it, to act on it. So we've realized that at least 3, and it should be connected to whatever students are doing. Yeah. So here's another example of how that might look like. So this is an example of feedback that's really integrated with the students' learning cycle. So Flipcast design, students have weekly preparatory work to do, and students then get feedback on how they engage with the activity and how they performed on it. So how they performed on the activity, because it's topical, students were getting feedback on their mastery of each weekly topic. And then what the nice thing that happened after that was when it came to exam, they dredged up all their emails, looked through them and said, oh, this topic was one I wasn't strong in. I'm going to target my revision on that. So that was a really nice finding. Is there a number for too much feedback? Possibly there is, especially if they are just getting emails with no real purpose. So for example, actually there was a, for one of the subjects, I don't think I have it here, the instructor realized that, oh, it's getting kind of repetitive. It's basically saying, oh, do the preparatory work, So what she did in the end was she decided, hey, I should do, and this is Nicole from business, what she realized is I should just look at patterns. So I'm going to aggregate the students' engagement over 3 weeks. And then I'm going to give them feedback on their engagement over 3 weeks rather than week by week, so that they the pattern of engagement is probably more stable and it's more important regarding their engagement. So yes, definitely think about how much feedback the student is getting and how you might want to manage that for students. Okay, yep, that's right. So academics have shared that don't overdo it. But I like this idea of identifying patterns over a period of time and giving students feedback based on their engagement patterns. That makes more sense and it's more manageable. Yeah.
I'm just also realizing that probably another whole session could be run on, in terms of the kind of data that you can download from Canvas.
Yes.
Specifically about the time spent on Canvas, and then let's say completion of this or posting in discussion forums and things like that. Is that
Yes.
possible to download?
Not you can actually you can post the you can download what students have actually posted in the discussion forums, but at this point it might be a little bit tricky to know how to give them feedback in OnTask based on those individual responses. More helpful would be whether they have engaged, whether they have posted or not, and that information is available in Canvas in the new analytics. So I just want to highlight again, remember to activate or enable new analytics at the start of your course when you publish. So otherwise, that data is not captured and you won't be able to pull reports.
And so the time spent as well is can be one of the columns as well, right?
It can be, although what happens is that you need to do a bit of calculation because it's time stamped. So basically it tells you the student's time in and it tells you the time in for each activity.
In new analytics, they give you the aggregated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If they do, then that's excellent. It's definitely something that you can use. But just, I think one thing we would say also is be careful what that information is telling you, because sometimes there could be different reasons why students spend a long time within the activity.
Yeah, but I mean, I had situations where students spend 15 minutes over 3 weeks, which is clearly not, like they're not using it. So
okay, yeah.
I'm thinking more about this extreme end of kind of not engaging with the content.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll have
Thank you, Nevin. Yeah, so
and I'm sure I'll be knocking on your door. And
please do. Yeah, so let me just quickly cover the ongoing support. Yes, I am available for virtual consultations. Just drop me an email or post a message on Teams. And yeah, so I'll really be happy to talk with you to explore your subject together with your team, if you have a team working with you, or just by yourself, to really think about how we can design the feedback and targeted communication and support in your subject. Okay, so please feel free to reach out to me. I'll also invite you to be part of this OnTask community of practice in Teams, because what we do is we don't meet very regularly, but what I do sometimes is I post some tips in there sometimes, and also we meet up like in over once in a few months to just talk about where things are headed and for sharing practices. Yeah, so if you're interested, please just let me know and I will add you to the teams. Yeah, thank you. I understand that you have to go. So lastly, thank you for your participation, and yeah, I hope to see you around again and to also carry on the conversation with you. Yeah, all right, I will stop the recording now.